What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith, our MMA show. Jimmy, we talked a lot about Conor McGregor and Cowboy and what was going to come next. And one of the names that kept getting brought up was Justin Gaethje. Now, I personally thought that this would not be the best matchup for Conor, but I was very intrigued to hear John Kavanagh say that is actually who he wanted Conor McGregor to fight. Now, perhaps you can build a little bit more up to this because they're both coming off very quick finishes of Cowboy Cerrone. Certainly going to put together a compelling highlight package. These are two guys that I don't want to say, well, obviously Conor's trash talk is Conor's trash talk. Gaethje can, but sometimes doesn't always engage. But this, if it comes through, would be an incredible fight in terms of just two guys that go out and really are known to throw strikes at will.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an incredibly compelling fight, an incredibly challenging fight for Conor McGregor. But one thing, I'm surprised that Kavanagh mentioned this fight because it seems like the more popular options or the ones that generate the biggest pay-per-views and the most eyes, and that's what Conor's all about all the time, is Jorge Masvidal, for sure. Also, of course, Khabib and the rivalry they have. Khabib might be out for a while simply because he already has Ferguson, then there's Ramadan, May to June. So he might be out for a while. And with that whole Conor McGregor season thing, I want to fight a lot. I want to stay busy this year, and I'm going to fight as much as I can, all these things. Who's available right now? Gaethje, I think, presents a lot of problems. Now, let me be very clear about one thing. Any stand-up striker is going to have trouble with Conor McGregor, period. End of sentence. Any stand-up striker, I think south of 170, natural 170, let's make that very, very clear, is going to have trouble with Conor McGregor. And Gaethje's mostly a stand-up striker. Yes, he has wrestling. No, he hardly ever uses it. He likes to throw punches. That's how he operates. He likes to fight at boxing range. Incredibly powerful. It's a dangerous fight, but any stand-up fight, Conor McGregor has his chances. So stylistically, it's a better matchup, I think, for Conor than Khabib, for sure. Because he doesn't have to deal with the wrestling, doesn't have to deal with the grappling, doesn't have to deal with the constant kind of grinding pace of Khabib. It's a different kind of fight stylistically and pacing-wise. It's more of a stand-up battle, which Conor, say what you want about the Cowboy fight, his stand-up looked very, very sharp.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but we've also kind of always teased, when is Gaethje going to go back to his All-American wrestling? Will he ever go back to it? We've yet to see it, even in losses. The loss to Poirier, the loss to Alvarez. To be fair, though, when I look at those two losses, because of how Gaethje fights, those easily could have went the other way. When you have wars like that, and he seemingly has a war just about every time he goes out, those fights can go either way. Obviously, when you look back at the most recent fights, although the James Vick fight was personal, I believe that was actually supposed to be against Ally Quinta. You also have the Barbosa fight where, you put two high-level guys against each other. And obviously, we saw how that ended for Barbosa. And then the Cowboy fight. I think, actually, just the way you look at it, there are some common opponents here with Conor that you can go back and probably give a little fuel for trash talk when you look at Poirier. But at the same time, like you said, I'll give Conor's speed an advantage against anyone in the division. I worry a little bit about Gaethje's jaw, but Gaethje has power that I don't know that Conor has seen recently. He didn't take any hits we saw in the Cowboy fight. I mean, sure, he went through Mayweather, but those are different gloves. I just don't know that he's used to the pressure and the pace and the quickness. I mean, Gaethje's a very strong starter. One of the things we talked about, Cowboy had going against him was he wasn't a strong starter. Gaethje will have the propensity to walk out and beat Conor to the center and stand there until somebody backs up. And the interesting part will be who takes the step back first.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of this style matchup that's interesting. And one of the things, whether you're a Conor fan or not, a 40-second fight just doesn't tell us a whole lot about the other aspects of Conor's game. We don't know how he stops a takedown. We don't know about his submission defense. We don't know about his pacing. We don't know about his gas. We don't know about all these things that were question marks about, that always have been about question marks about Conor stylistically and athletically. Justin Gaethje will test a lot of those things. He's just a different kind of opponent. Not as different as Khabib, for sure. Not as different as a bunch of guys at 170, I think, that have great wrestling and can really drag Conor into deep water. Gaethje really isn't that guy. What he has is one-shot power. He might be the hardest hitter at 155 pounds, period, in terms of one shot. Conor's more accurate. Conor's a bit faster, a bit trickier, but man, Justin Gaethje just has incredibly heavy hands. And one thing about a Gaethje win over Conor, if it happened, it would be a brutal knockout. That's just how, when Gaethje wins fights, that's how he wins it. And Conor hasn't faced one of those yet.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And that's what makes it so compelling. We actually talked before the fight. You know, did you want to see the rematch and all the things that would go into the fight with Khabib and how the first one really wasn't as competitive? And you can sit there and you can make a litany of reasons as to why it wasn't competitive. You could probably make a whole term paper on how it could be more competitive now after the fight with Cowboy. But like you said, we've seen those aspects of Conor's games be tested for better, to be fair, and for worse. One of the things we haven't seen is him go in with somebody like Gaethje, just because, to be fair, there's not a lot of fighters like Gaethje in the division that have that power and have that wrestling background they seemingly just ignore because they want to have that scrap. Yeah, I guess in a way, you could almost look at it the same way he fought Nate, except Gaethje's power is off the charts compared to Nate. And that's what part of made those fights so exciting was you knew what you were going to get. You knew you were going to get two guys that were going to throw down and scrap. And that really brings a lot of energy and excitement. We thought we were going to get that with Cowboy, but Cowboy just didn't, have that initial surge. And when that tidal wave of Conor McGregor hit him, he went backwards. I don't think Gaethje will go backwards. He may get knocked out, but he won't go backwards.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Do you think, now here's the issue for me. It's because Khabib's going to be out for a while, just because he already has Ferguson and then Ramadan and all that stuff. The timing's not going to work out for a while. So I think there has to be a fight beforehand. The idea that the UFC or Conor himself, remember this is Kavanagh talking, not Conor McGregor, would choose Justin Gaethje over a potential showdown with Masvidal, who's red hot right now. I just think money-wise and fan interest-wise and pay-per-view buys and all these things favor Masvidal over Justin Gaethje, who's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, but might not have the crossover fan recognition of, like I said, Masvidal so hot right now with the BMF title and everything. Would they choose Gaethje over Masvidal? I find that hard to believe.
I do too. It's risk reward, right? I mean, there's risk every time he goes in the cage, right? I get it. Some people love to sit here and act like we constantly down talk Conor McGregor. We don't. But listen, everyone pretty much loses. Go Google Ronda Rousey if you don't think that happens. However, at the same time, as you said, from a casual standpoint, from a pay-per-view standpoint, from a couple months ago where Conor McGregor was saying he designed the BMF belt, everything was being put into place, at least from what I could tell, to build this, massive fight between him and Jorge. And now we get into a position where that puzzle piece is finally in, right? Like we think the puzzle is completed and everything is put in front of us for this to happen. And then Justin Gaethje comes up. And it just doesn't seem like it's the best idea for Conor based on what we've seen from Gaethje. It doesn't seem like it's the best draw from a casual fan. It doesn't seem like it fits a lot of the pieces to the puzzle that they were just building with Jorge. I mean, Jorge was there. Like, this was everything we needed. Short of him getting in the ring and cutting some promo after Conor won, Justin Gaethje, I think, has also been that guy, for better or worse, kind of always been overlooked, and he kind of always didn't get every shot that he should have gotten. And he kind of has that blue collar appeal to him because he came from World Series. And I don't know if a casual fan is ready to see that style fighter take on Conor McGregor. I think they're still looking for the big marquee name to take on Conor McGregor. And you can say a lot about Jorge's past, but the problem that you have right now is when you look at the marquee name, Masvidal is higher than Justin. It's just all there is to it.
Yeah, right now, certainly momentum's on his side. It's very much on his side. And I think an important thing to keep in mind if you're putting this match together, potentially, Masvidal has been previously in his career a guy who's had his share of losses, had his share of losing streaks, hasn't always been at the top of the division, or not that he's at the top of the division now, but he's certainly a name that you talk about with title shots at 170. He could lose again. He could go on another streak and suddenly not be as popular or as respected, however you want to put it. That streak could come of losses. He's had his ups and downs before. The 55-pound title is always going to be there, whether it's Ferguson or Khabib, whomever it is. Justin Gaethje, I think, as a force in the division, will always be there, or at least will be there for the rest of this year, provided he doesn't fight, Khabib or Ferguson. So Masvidal is the one I think that is a bit more timely. I would put that together now. Another aspect of this is kind of interesting, is he wants to fight Gaethje, who's a natural 55er, at 70. Kavanagh says he doesn't want them cutting weight, doesn't want Conor cutting weight to 55. He doesn't absolutely have to. There isn't a reason if there isn't a belt on the line. That's a little weird to me. If you're going to stay at 170, fight 170 pounders. Cowboy, you could say, is a tweener. He's in the middle. Him fighting at 70. He's fought at 70 before. That's fine. But to keep drawing up, assuming Gaethje agrees to that, drawing 55ers up to 170, he's like, look, to me, it's like, if you're going to stay at 170, fight 170 pounders. If you want to make a run there and be a contender, fine. But stop fighting 55 pounders at 170. You want to fight at 55, go to 55. So that's another kind of strange aspect of it.
Yeah, I would write that off a little bit. And here you go, a positive Conor McGregor sentiment. I would write that off a little bit in the fact that he is willing to fight and he wants to make it easier for an opponent. Not that I don't want to say Gaethje's had problems with weight. He has in the past in terms of what he's talked about with his wrestling career. But I think you're just seeing his willingness to engage in fights this year. You mentioned he's really made no qualms about it. This is the year that he wants to come back and do a lot of fights in the octagon. And ironically enough, when you look at a lot of the things we just spent the last 12 to 15 minutes talking about, a lot of the fights that he needs don't line up in this time frame. He came into the first card for the year. You've got other fighters that are already on the docket that are going through, Khabib with religion things that, those should take precedence over actual fighting, and certainly over Conor's rematch. I firmly believe that. But at the same time, he's now having to fight into a calendar. They're really not in a position to build up fights the way they used to for him, because he's the one that's coming out and saying, hey, I want these fights. Give me these matchups, not let's wait until November and I'll fight again and I'll do it against, whoever wins. Against, Khabib and Tony Ferguson or whatever the case may be. Don't get me wrong. He's in position he has the power to make those calls. He's electing not to and putting himself in harm's way. And I have to, everyone has to respect that no matter how you feel about him. You have to respect that he's willing to take on the toughest challengers. And even mentioning Justin Gaethje's name, I think, took a lot of people back.
Yeah, no, I certainly respect the call out and the name and the schedule and all these things, but I just have issues with the staying at a weight class without fighting people in that weight class that are naturally of that weight class, because it's just a different ballgame. Totally different. I don't believe Conor McGregor is a competitive 170 pounder, right? I just don't think he beats the elite guys. They're just too damn big and there are too many great wrestlers. And I don't think it's like, look, 170 is too tough stylistically. Right? There's just too many great wrestlers that aren't going to stand and trade punches with him. They're too big. They can take his punches. And I don't think he wants anything to do with those guys. Now, I'm not criticizing him. I think it would be stupid for him to try to make a run at 170 when he's a natural 55 pounder. But if you don't want to fight those guys and, take on the best at 170, why are you fighting at 170 pounds? It's just, I don't get it. If you're going to fight 55ers like Cowboy, like Justin Gaethje, go to 55 and be a contender there, and it makes sense for everybody. But staying in a weight class where you don't want to actually fight the fighters in that weight class, that doesn't make sense.
I agree with you, and you know by now the hours and hours of commentary we put in together. I am a massive proponent of don't hold up a division. And I will argue that this, does, against my own points, hold up a division. At the same time, though, we're
to some
looking
degree,
at,
he's not fighting contenders at 170. He's not. I mean, I'll give him credit for that. He's not fighting fringe. He's not holding onto a belt at 170. He's not in the title mix. It's just like he's kind of like hanging out at 170 without actually fighting those guys. And that's just a weird. I'm not saying he's holding up the division necessarily. I'm just saying he's, I don't know, taking up space at a weight class where he doesn't seem interested in fighting the top guys.
Well, I mean, to that point, basically he's cherry picking who he wants to fight in another division, puffing them up to come fight him, and then sending them back down when they could be continuing to go up the ladder for their own title. So to a degree, you're right. He's not, holding a title up, but he's essentially holding individuals up from working their way up to a title, and in the process giving them probably massive paydays to do so, which is, listen, for a lot of these guys, all the incentive they need. What would you rather do? Get a massive payday to fight Conor on a main card? Or would you rather continue to float around in your division and make 60-60 or 75-75? Right? It's common sense. It's business at that point. And, listen, you're going to fight Conor McGregor. I think a lot of people in the division just want to fight Conor McGregor to say they fought him. At this point, he's going to go down, whether anyone likes it or not, as one of the most talked about fighters, maybe of all time at this point. So I think there's a lot in it for a fighter that wants to move up. The UFC has allowed him to call his shots for so long that at this point it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to balk at anything Conor asks or says. But at the same time, this is what we've asked for as fans. We've wanted to see Conor McGregor fight. I have wanted to see Conor McGregor fights. I've wanted to watch Conor McGregor pay-per-views. Been without them for a very long time. And now that we're finally here, we have these rather interesting discussions, like you said, where we're kind of in this gray area. We don't know what he's doing, but we want to see him fight. There's not a lot of fighters that command that type of attention.
Yeah, and he'll definitely, the fights will happen, for sure. He could say, 170, I want this guy. The UFC will acquiesce to pretty much anything he wants. So it's not a matter of will if fights happen, they will. I'm just saying I would personally prefer, if he's going to fight 155 pounders, that he actually did it at 155 pounds. It's a personal preference on my side. I don't think it makes his wins, illegitimate or anything like that, because he's a 155 pounder anyway. It's not like he's a big 170 taking on 55ers. It's just if he's going to compete and stay in a weight class, and that's his natural weight class, he's going to fight guys in that weight class, but I want to do it at the weight class above me. It's, I would just prefer he do it at 55. I don't think it makes the fights necessarily less legitimate, or I won't watch them or anything like that. It's not a huge issue. It's just I'd rather he fight at 55, but not my call.
We mentioned the last time, and, we could take it to task for anything, that there wasn't a lot of media ramp up. You had actually offered maybe some rehabilitation on Conor McGregor's part. Now that we know the end result, that Cowboy was basically just a 40-second obstacle put in Conor's way, for a better way of putting it, do you feel like the next fight is able to go back to the Conor McGregor press tours that we've seen? Or do you think now that essentially having happened what happened in terms of Cowboy, they don't need to rely on that publicity? Because to be honest, there's nothing Conor can say that's going to say more than that 40-second fight against Cowboy.
Yeah, we might see a little bit more confident, a little bit more talk, but I think they're going to keep the brakes on that for the most part. Remember, we still don't know what's going on with his legal issues. They might keep a comparatively tight lid on him until this thing is resolved, in a sense. So remember, the out-of-octagon issues aren't settled yet. We don't know what's happening. So it might be a case of like, hey, look, let's just keep this new rehabilitated, for lack of a better word, Conor McGregor. Let's keep this guy at the forefront for a little while until we don't have to anymore, or until, who knows. But remember, the legal issues that may have played a part in kind of keeping him under wraps haven't been resolved yet.
As a final point to this, do you feel like that factors into this more than maybe we know? And a lot of what we're seeing here is just the determination to get fights in the books before we look at a possibility of Conor not being able to fight. And I don't want to say maybe the combination more would be best, that the UFC is trying to get as much as they can at a time where Conor is also trying to do much financially as possible.
I would. If I were Dana White in this position. Look, I have made no assumptions about Conor McGregor's guilt or innocence. In terms of this sexual assault case or what's going on, I have no idea. I don't know any more than anyone else. But Dana doesn't know either. And you would go, look, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know what's going to come out of this trial. Maybe he's not guilty, but a trial would have a bunch of information that would sour the fans on him. Who knows, right? Who knows? Strike while the iron's hot. Strike while you can. Strike while there's momentum. So that's what I would do, is basically book as many fights as you can with the time you have available. And also remember, Conor's not a spring chicken. He's not in his early 20s where you got another 10 years. You want to strike and get as many fights from him as you possibly can anyway at this stage in his career.
Yeah, I mean, kind of an odd analogy here, but burn the candle at both ends, right? I mean, you've got to go now. There was a period of time where maybe he wasn't going at this level, but it's definitely time to go now. And what I will offer to you guys is, once we know the date, the name, we will be here to cover it for you. And in the meantime, anything that does happen, obviously, you guys know we do our best to break out a podcast and give you guys our opinions on it. With that said, we appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.